You can copy every feature of a game, visuals, music, characters, all of it, and still end up with something soulless. If you don't understand what made the original special, there's no way you're qualified to develop a sequel for it, and unfortunately, that is exactly the fate that has befell Little Nightmares 3. I'm a big fan of this series, so when I found out that Supermassive was taking over development from Tarsier Studios, I was immediately cautious. I tried to stay optimistic, told myself they wouldn't f this up, but deep down, I knew the series died the moment Tarsier stepped away. With the release of Little Nightmares 3, the game has been bombarded with negative reception, and after beating the game myself, I cannot blame anyone for being upset with what this series has become. But to understand why Little Nightmares 3 failed, you need to understand what made the originals work in the first place. The last two Little Nightmares games have a cult following for a reason. The aesthetics and visual design are a big contributor, but that's far from the only reason. There's two other factors that make this series special, and I need to establish what they are before I tell you why Little Nightmares 3 fails in damn near every regard. For me, their way of storytelling is so fascinating. It's non-linear, nothing makes complete sense, and a lot of what's featured may seem meaningless in the moment, but it's far from that. Both games take an abstract, metaphorical approach to horror. Little Nightmares 1 covers gluttony, 2 is about escapism in one form or another. On a first playthrough, a lot of it is intentionally unclear, and even after several runs, these games make no damn sense, but that's why there's such a dedicated community and so much discourse on these games even years after release. And then there's the character design, specifically the villains. This is the reason Little Nightmares blew up online. Every time a new game drops, I know I'm waiting for my favorite YouTubers to drop a Let's Play, because if there's one thing Little Nightmares excels at, it's creating these disturbing, grotesque creatures with distinct roles and personalities. So now that we've established what makes Little Nightmares, let's talk about... Little Nightmares 3 has 4 boss enemies. Not one of them comes close to what we've seen in the past. The first enemy you encounter is a giant baby doll. Are we dead ass? Little Nightmares is known for its nightmarish, disgusting, fleshy creatures, so my disappointment was unimaginable when I saw the first enemy being a generic doll. Pair that up with the first location being a bright desert, and this felt like anything but Little Nightmares. To top it all off, the baby can shoot
lights
out of its eye, and I don't even know what to say about this. It's rare for me not to be able to word my opinion, but this genuinely just sucks, bro. The style, the direction, the foundations the previous 2 games laid is abandoned with this enemy. This is so incredibly boring and unoriginal. It's not scary, and it's definitely not Little Nightmares. This series is known for its gross caricatures of adults, and half of the fun has always been figuring out what each character represents and what their backstory may be. There's nothing here with this baby. Look, I beat the game. I got to the credits, so I know why they did it and why it dictates a lot of their design decisions throughout, but I'm not any happier about it. We'll be getting to that soon though. Then there's the candy factory supervisor. We'll call her, Miranda. Playing through Little Nightmares 3, I kept getting this deja vu feeling. There are certain moments that were iconic in the first 2 games, and this one takes them and rehashes them. It takes the core concept and changes it slightly, like, hey bro, can I copy your homework and change it a bit? Certain shots, themes, and design choices seem heavily inspired, but uninspired. I was complaining about how the baby boss is not Little Nightmares, but I also don't want Supermassive to copy exact moments either. Expand on the world, keep it original, but don't stray from the foundations. That's all I'm asking for. I was watching a bit of this video the other day, and Terrico perfectly describes what I felt whilst playing this.
Alright, so let me get on to my big criticisms of this game. So Little Nightmares 3 is, in my opinion, it is a game cosplaying a Little Nightmares game rather than actually being a Little Nightmares game.
It feels like they've got the aesthetics generally right, but none of the substance within those aesthetics. So let's talk about the prime example of this, Miranda. She's the second boss you face, and she's no better than the baby. Miranda's appearance closely resembles the teacher from 2. She's a stern, classy lady, but apart from the extra arms, she's nowhere near as unsettling. The teacher had something so eerie about her, those piercing eyes, that ordinary appearance until BAM! Her neck stretches impossibly long. There was shock in that transformation, but Miranda being a spider creature just felt predictable. Yeah, what else could it have been? And her being this spider creature also links back to the doctor from 2, who also crawled on walls and ceilings. Miranda does the exact same thing. She's literally a combination of the 2 best enemies from Little Nightmares 2. There's no new gimmicks, no new ideas. It's just the teacher again, but worse. The ventriloquist is by far the best designed enemy, but that doesn't mean he's good. Compared to the previous game's enemies, he'd rank near the bottom, so it's disappointing that he's the best boss here, and that's mainly because his design is more grotesque, closer to what the originals did than anything else in this game, but he's still not scary. For most of the section, you're dealing with his doll, not the ventriloquist himself, and that goofball is the same size as you. It massively kills the tension when the main threat of the circus section is this small puppet instead of the actual hulking, disgusting figure. I hate dogging on Supermassive like this. I feel for them having to create a sequel to games with such a dedicated cult following, but everything they do here, even the good parts, just doesn't match the standard that fans expect. Before we discuss the final boss, I need to address something. These locations feel completely disconnected. Each section is its own standalone thing rather than part of a bigger world. The baby from the desert is gone, never referenced again after you escape its area. The only link between any areas is that the candy factory supplies the circus. That's it. One connection in the whole game. Each of these sections could have been standalone games and you wouldn't have missed any context, which is a far cry from how the original 2 did it. The final enemy is where most people's disappointment stems from with this game, and for many different reasons, so I'm gonna go through everything here. Let me build this up for you though. After your arduous and not so long adventure, you arrive at the final destination, the Institute. While I'm uncertain whether this is an actual physical location or inside Lowe's head, this place is significant because at the very least it is the source of Lowe's trauma. Up until this point we have no clue who the final boss will be, unlike the previous games which constantly hinted at their main villains. Our first encounter with the final villain is this. And oh boy, I have a complaint. Out of the 4 bosses, 2 of them are massively oversized creatures. The baby doll and now this guy. I feel no fear from a giant toad chasing me or a f***ing hand. Little Nightmares was never just about big equals scary because that's too easy. The scariest villains in this series are only slightly bigger than you. They're intimidating but not inconceivably huge. Supermassive completely missed the point. Sure, there's horror in big things, that's called megalophobia, but you can't make me scared of a hand. There has to be balance. Make it too supermassive, it's not scary. Too small, and there's no intimidation factor. So that's my main complaint with this boss. The design is god-awful and so underwhelming as the final villain. While I'm not as deep in the lore as you might be, I did find out about the significance of this villain. His name is Otto, also known as the Hypnotist or the Counselor, and he's supposedly one of the biggest villains in the Little Nightmares universe. The problem is that some people, such as myself, didn't f***ing know this, and the game never made a point of displaying his significance. You'd think that for such a major character in the lore, there'd be way more anticipation towards this encounter, but I thought this was literally just some guy running an asylum. I thought the significance of this character was Lowe coming back to exact his revenge on him, and that's exactly why so many people have an issue with this. There's no build-up, there's no in-game lore. all of this just comes out of nowhere, and I'm not kidding. They absolutely butchered this game, man. The final fight is okay, I guess, but because it felt like it had no narrative significance, it couldn't hold a candle to the fight with, say, 6. While on the topic of companions, it's only right to touch upon an aspect of Little Nightmares 3 that ended up being a mistake. I'm gonna keep this section short because it's pretty self-explanatory, but I think they messed up with this game the moment they introduced co-op. I'm usually all for co-op, and being able to do a single-player story with a friend, I love that shit. But Little Nightmares does not work like that. I played the third one just like how I played the other two, solo. That's all I've ever known this series to be, and if it wasn't gonna be good at solo play, that means it's failed at what Little Nightmares is, the core formula. And unfortunately, I can't imagine online co-op being any better, but playing this solo with an AI companion removed all the tension this game could have had. My main complaint here is that the AI companion, who in my case was low, would basically solve any puzzle or problem I had for me instantly. If we're hiding away from an enemy, I don't have to time moving from cover to cover myself, because usually the AI would give me a clue as to when and where to go. Sometimes when I was faced with a puzzle, which was very rare, the AI would call out to me or approach the answer immediately, so I always knew what to do. For the majority of the game, all you have to do is follow your AI companion, because it will just tell you where to go. Let me ask you this. What is the fun in that? There was quite literally never a challenge. If we were in a chase sequence, the companion would always be faster and ahead of me, and I would simply have to follow its path to get to safety. Easy. Another thing, Little Nightmares 2 also featured a companion in the form of 6, but that felt entirely different to how it is here. For one, when Mono and 6 first meet, they are distrustful of each other. There's no set relationship, they are strangers who have to partner up to survive. And that dynamic always had some tension behind it, and it made a whole lot of sense when 6 betrayed Mono because they were never friends. They never had a connection. She was willing to make that sacrifice because Mono meant nothing to her. It's very different in 3 because right off the bat, Low and Alone are clearly best friends. We don't see them as anything but that. And there are plenty of moments in the story where they comfort one another, hold each other. Plus, unlike Little Nightmares 2, in which 6 and Mono occasionally split up, in this one you never part from your companion, which I think was a huge missed opportunity, because that is such an easily effective way of creating tension. Get the player invested in this relationship, get them relying on one another, and then pull them apart, separate them at some point, and watch them panic. They never do that here. The most splitting up you do here is if one of you has to climb into a room to unlock the door for the other or whatever, and that takes 5 seconds to do. For a studio that specializes in horror, Supermassive sure doesn't understand how to scare the player, huh? To top this all off, let's talk about the gameplay itself. I've got a horrible and harsh truth to reveal to you. The thing about Little Nightmares 3 is that Little Nightmares was never known for its gameplay. That's not why people love it. It's good enough to keep us playing, but the story, world, and characters is what we're all here for. I will say, out of every Little Nightmares game, this one feels best to play. The previous two were always a bit janky. You'd sometimes accidentally do something you didn't want to do, and platforming sections could be super annoying sometimes, but 3 feels a lot better. It feels new, it feels improved. The movement is good, the animations are generally satisfying and smooth. The platforming was never really an issue. However, that's where my praise starts and ends for the gameplay, because other than the actual technical smoothness of it, Supermassive did not understand Little Nightmares gameplay at all. We can all agree that it was always a puzzle platformer, right? I know the puzzles were never anything crazy, but I did get stuck a couple of times. It did make you stop and think now and then, like the TV sections, puzzles, the doors at the end of 2, you couldn't just breeze through without a thought. When I say 3 has no puzzles, I mean that literally. In the 4 hours of playtime, it has nothing like what I just mentioned 2 had. No logic is ever needed to progress. There'd be a box to push sometimes to climb onto something, or a wall to hit with your wrench, but I wouldn't say those are puzzles. That's just ordinary gameplay. Little Nightmares 3 is a walking sim in every sense of the term. You enter a room, you go from left to right through it, and enter into the next room. Repeat 50 times until you finish the game. They put all their marketing into promoting the co-op aspect of this game, and I'm just wondering what exactly the appeal is of doing a walking sim with friends. At the price point they're selling this game at, this is not good enough. If you're going to have co-op, add puzzles that get both players thinking and experimenting to overcome something. There is none of that throughout. I'm so upset by this game because this was easily one of my most anticipated of the year, and for me to end up getting bored by the end of the very short playtime is crazy. This game flies by, there's barely any content here, and despite that, I was considering dropping it before I could finish it. It's so mind-numbingly boring. There are no engaging mechanics. The wrench and bow are not implemented in clever or thoughtful ways. There's sometimes a loose wall to hit to progress, or an obvious target to shoot. That's it. It is abysmal. The Institute is by far the best part of the game because despite how Otto sucks as a villain, the location itself is eerie, and there's one particular section within it that I felt was good. Sure, it was reminiscent of this section from 2, but it did frighten me. It was intense, but other than that, there is no engaging moments throughout the game. There's a ton of chase sequences, but they're insanely scripted. What I liked about the original games was how a lot of the sections weren't entirely linear, and some people did bring this up, which I really appreciate. I'm glad others feel the same way. The other games felt a lot more dynamic and off the cuff, whilst 3 is just a walking sim. You play by its rules to progress. There's no other way about it. Just to quickly touch upon the ending, spoiler alert if you're not there, it's revealed that Alone was never real. She was just a coping mechanism of Lo's imagination, and actually the entire adventure that took place was something Lo came up with himself. It did for a brief minute give me some realization of that's why every location was so childish. That's why a toy chases you in the first level. But after some reflection, I feel like those kinds of plots are always such a cop-out. Like, we don't need to theme anything or explain anything or expand on lore because everything you just saw was not real and a figment of someone's imagination. Even though all these locations are somewhat linked by the end of the game and a lot of stuff starts to make sense, I don't think it's enough for the game to suck just so it can reveal stuff in the ending. You know what I mean? Basically, the ending does make the story and themes make sense, but it doesn't warrant a lot of the game's design choices being what they were despite that. I hope that makes sense. Is Little Nightmares 3 a bad game? I don't think so, but it's definitely not a Little Nightmares game. It's trying to be, but it misses the mark with everything it does. I would personally grab this on a sale when it's under $10. Do not get this at full price because I walked out of this game feeling cheated. But let me know your thoughts. What do you think about the enemies here? Do you think co-op was a good addition? And do consider subscribing if you want to hear my thoughts on the latest games. That's all from me. See ya.